All right. So today is the first of our training series that we're calling Open Training Tuesday and Thursday. I think twice a week should be fairly sufficient for most teams. And our goal with it is really to kind of get everyone up to speed and acclimated to what the newest things that are out there are available. The current focus obviously is ServiceMate. ServiceMate has been had a huge update here with ServiceMate 11, and to really help facilitate that, we're wanting to put this on because what we're seeing is it's so drastically different. We're needing to really update all of our training materials for what they were before. And that being said, um, we don't want you guys waiting for that until the training is done, so we're kind of kicking this off for that specifically. Um, so that what we're going to do is kind of start from the beginning and really kind of hone in and talk about how to activate ServiceMate 11, and from there kind of diving into a few things. If you do have any specific questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll kind of be working from there. And that's it. Unless anyone has anything specifically, like you said, feel free to put it in the chat and we'll just kind of keep going. So for starters, let me kick over here. So from the ServiceMate homepage itself, if you haven't already activated ServiceMate 11, there's a few ways of doing that. The eventual video, it will be in the subject in the notes in the comments area, but the easiest way at the moment is to go to the launch of ServiceMate 11. Great content here, tons of information. You can tell as long as this page needs to scroll, there's just so much information packed into this update. But right here you see Activate ServiceMate 11 now. And if you click on that, it'll have you log in. And it's going to say, hey, do you want to go ahead and activate ServiceMate 11, which obviously we are going to do for this training. Great. And that's set. Let me jump back over to my other screen here. And let me see if I just refresh. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and sign out and back in. Yep, and we see that has taken effect. So the first reason we can see that is we have a whole new set of icons. So everything has got a bit of fresh paint on on our home page. All the icons, the quick buttons to take us to different parts of ServiceMate have gotten an update. Um, as well as just while we're looking at the home screen here, the other thing that we have updated is in the past, as maybe a company owner or as one of the people who may have security role access of a business owner, you didn't know which one of these posts were available to everyone or not. Now you see this little person icon. If you hover over it, it will tell you, hey, this is only visible to business owners. So that would be one of the first things to really note here, that on the home screen, that was updated. But just while we're talking about it, the home screen in general, besides just these posts from the system posting here, this is also a place where you can have kind of a bulletin board type of an interface where everyone, the first time they log in, this is where they're going, this is what they're seeing. So you can be able to put posts here, hey, pizza this Friday, or whatever it might be. This is kind of a nice place to put those. All right. So from here, let's probably go ahead and jump into the dispatch board. And from the dispatch board, we're seeing all the different things that we're used to seeing, but there's a few key updates here. For starters, it's kind of what the dispatch board holds. This is where we would create a new job, manage and work with our queues, which is really one of the most important aspects of ServiceMate, our staff members, our job lists, and in this panel here we have different tabs such as the dispatch board, or dispatch map rather, your task lists, your calendar view, your staff schedules, and your queue board. One of the things that got a nice update in 11 is that when I have a smaller window, let's make this really small here, we can see that I not only had a handful of staff and a handful of queues, but they do pack up, and I can see that I can now hit a drop down. So if you're a team that has just a ton of tasks, job queues and staff, this is going to be especially helpful for you. Let me get my window resized here. There we go. And so that was just kind of just wanted to touch on that just as far as what the dispatch board is for and what are some of the updates we've seen under 11. When I go to a job, we're going to see some other niceties that they have been included here. First of all, the close button is bigger. So this button up here before was quite a bit smaller. Now it's bigger, easier to hit. Another nice add is a full screen. So now this will fill the screen with that job card, make it a little easier to work with, and have a lot more space as well. Let me shrink this back down. The other addition here is in the right panel here on the job details, we have the job diary. And this is a listing of everything that's really happened on this job from its creation all the way to now. And what we have here now is a filter button. This filter will be contextual based on the objects that are in your screen, on your diary. And so if I only want to see notes, I'm only looking at notes. If I only want to see tasks, I'm only seeing the tasks. Where in the past, they've been kind of shuffled in with everything else that's been happening on the job, which is helpful, but at the same time, when I'm looking for specific things, rather difficult. So the filtering is a huge add that's really, really welcome. The other big thing, and this is probably the most notable item, is the ability to, when I touch the customer name here, I actually jump to modify the client itself. So if there are changes that need to be made at the client level, I no longer need to leave the job, leave the dispatch board, go to clients, find that client, and make those changes. I can just touch the customer name and be able to interact with the customer record itself directly. I can still make changes to the customer as far as maybe changing it by just hitting the 3 more button and hitting change customer now. That's one of the big changes. Okay. The other thing that was added is the ability to have more than just 2 contacts, more than just the job and the billing contact. Now, as you notice, nothing's happening here at the moment because that actually needs to be enabled. So let me close this and go to settings. And so from the ServiceMate add-ons, there is now smart, let me just search for smart here, smart contacts. Okay. And so what that enables is this additional contact called a property manager contact that you'll be able to add at the job level. The other big change, and it's really more of a way that just bringing clarity to how ServiceMate will operate, is when you have a job for the first time for a new customer, the information as you continue to update that job card for that customer for the first job for them, it will continue to update the client card as you go. Where in the past, once you save it, it was locked in. So, but what that also means is the second and furthermore jobs, as you make those changes to the customer record or at the job level, those changes would not go back to the client as you continue to make them. So that's one important distinction to keep in mind. So let me turn that on, and now let's go back to the dispatch board. And now we might need to do a refresh here. Boom, boom, boom. Let's try logging out, back in. There we go. So, and sometimes you do updates that need to be propagated, and oftentimes a quick log out and back in will clear that. So now we see we have the job contact, we have a billing contact, and now I can add a property manager. And it will default to be able to select from your job, the job contacts you have currently in your account. So I can select the job contact or the billing contact, or I can just pop in all new information in general. Now, if the job record or the client record itself, rather, has more than one contact, you'd be able to select from those as well, regardless of what you have their role set as. So even though there is a property manager role, you'll be able to select from any of these types as well as any custom ones you may type into that role set. Okay. So that's a big one for a lot of teams, being able to have at least one more point of contact. Now, one nice thing that has been added to, I think, since ServiceMate 10, so last year, is the ability to add additional contact details. Let's say a insurance adjuster. And I can't type today, that's fine. There we go. And let's say his phone number is 555-555-1234, of course. And then his name is john@acme.com is his email. So I have that saved here at this point, and what's nice here is I can just simply click that email and it will automatically start generating a new email for that contact. Even though he's not an actual contact on the job, it just makes it really, really easy if you have additional people to be able to just click that. If you have ServiceMate phone enabled on your account, that phone number would be clickable as well to do a quick dial out. And if you're on mobile, that phone number is also selectable to dial out as well. All right. So those were some of the big things, at least at the job card for the job details. And on quotes and invoicing, there was another really big add, which we need to enable as well. So let me just save this job, go back to settings and add-ons. One of the biggest new additions is bundles. Bundles, there we are. What bundles allow you to do is take a series of items, a series of materials from your account, and create one material that they will all encompass. This can be really, really helpful for a number of things, and think flat rate pricing is one of the big ones. But what this allows you to do is say, okay, well, this one thing equals this 2 items or 20 items, and instead of having to manually keep adding them back in every time, it automatically clumps them together and only displays the customer that one line as opposed to the 2 or 20 items that encompass it. What is also nice is as you update the pricing for those individual materials in the back end, that will update the pricing for the bundle moving forward as you add it. Obviously, it wouldn't affect existing jobs that would be added to. But also, within the single job itself, I can have a bundle that may have a few items in it, and if it had X, Y, and Z in it, but I needed to add one more thing as well, I can add that one thing to that one bundle within that job. So it makes it really, really powerful and easy to work with. So now that we have that created, or that enabled on our account here, let's go in and we can see under settings where we're normally used to seeing materials, we also will have a bundle set. Okay, so I can go to materials and bundles uniquely. And let's just add a bundle here, and this is going to be our test bundle. So we have an item number and a name, just like a regular material would have. And let's look at what we can add in here. So I'm going to add some labor, and I'm going to add sample material A and sample material B in this, okay? And the labor will set at 100 as well. We'll set the quantity to 1.5 for these and save that. Okay, so that is now a bundle within our account. And I can go back to our job here, add material, type in our bundle, and here we are. Perfect. So now we have that bundle on this, and I can click here, I can click on, if you notice, the item code is now a link. And over on the left side, let me just kind of move this over a little bit. I do get a little popover letting me know what is included in that. But if I click on it, and the same can be said for over here on the pricing as well. If I click on the name, it lets me customize the name. But if I click on any of those other points, I'm able to see the details of this bundle specifically. And let's say I want to change this to a 2. So I'm going to give a quantity of 2 for the item B, material B. And that saves it just for this one specifically. If I go back to our settings for materials, look at our bundle, this is still set to the 1. So that change only affected that individual job and the values associated there. Okay. Oops. There we go. This is the job. All right. So that was one big new change as well. Now the other item that is really pretty handy is, I'm just going to call it a header. And let's say this was for our, we're going to do a shower install. And I'm going to set this above here, and I'm going to give this a quantity of 0. And if you notice, as soon as I set that to 0, the values of everything else went away. Because what that would create, if I created a quote here real quick, my quote needs line items. Let me see what my invoice looks like. There we go. So, and in this template, it's probably not a great template, but you can see there's no values here. So it kind of creates a separator, a divider. If I had several items, it kind of creates spacing so I can see what those grouped together would be. So if I had a shower and let's just add another header. And we'll call this one the bathtub. And I add another bundle here. And again, set this to 0 and make that invoice. It's just automatically creating nice spacing. And you know, we like to have better designed templates here. This is just one of the stock templates. And so what would be nice here is if we didn't have this vertical line here, it would create nice, clean understanding of what that is going to include. And you know, usually we don't have just one item, we usually have several, and it would probably make even more sense at that point. So that was one of the nice adds that ServiceMate had in 11 on that point specifically. All right. Now, the other thing, if you noticed here, when I have this document open, there's a new side-by-side option. If I click side-by-side, it will automatically make that document half the screen and your job half the screen, making it kind of easy to be able to look side-by-side and work on stuff without having to move things around. If I close this document, it automatically resizes the window back in. Similarly, if I were to open this document and close the job, when it's side by side, it brings the document back in as well. So they did a really good polish to that part of it as well. Now, one of the things, if you use services, you'll probably notice something different on that end. So let me go over to my add-ons and enable services. Okay. And of course, services will take a moment just to get activated in the account. All right. So now we have services here, and let's just turn one on real quick. Okay, this is automatically already published. Perfect. So when I'm on the dispatch board, and if you've used services in the past, you're used to seeing them directly above the job address. Now services is tucked away up on top, and the same exact interfaces would apply. So everything works basically the same, other than services has moved. It was a little shocking at first when I saw that. And Shannon was just asking if we can see side by side again. If I bring up a document, any document in here, there is now a new side by side option. And when I enable that, it allows me to make the document take up half the window and the job card take up the other half of the window. And then depending on the size of your screen, the job card will probably make a little bit more sense here on the job diary, but most of the time if I'm looking at a document, I'm probably looking at line items anyways. No problem. All right, so let's go ahead and close that back out. Okay. Now, did anyone have any big items that they really saw from the launch that they were really hoping to see? Now, there are definitely a number of additional things, and some of them are easy to demonstrate, and some of them, unfortunately, not as much. Let's just kind of so we've talked about bundles a little bit, and bundles will probably get its own dedicated piece. But the biggest thing today, I'm kind of just doing an overview. Talk about expanding the job card a bit in the side-by-side mode. The section lines for your quotes and invoice documents, and this is probably a nice example here because they've got a lot to look at. But you can see here we've got bedroom and several items, and bedroom 2 and several items. So when you do have documents that are kind of laid out like that, having them broken up by that divider is really, really helpful and more clear to define and organize and review with your customer. Now, the room scan is one that was, I think, surprising to a lot of people to include it, and I think a lot of people haven't really used the service-made internal measuring all that much. But even if you weren't really gleaning measurements from this, just to get a good scan of the room and to visualize it in the 3D space, I think a lot of teams will find helpful and usable. I think a lot of teams were also noting they were having a hard time finding it. So a few key items to take away from that is, one, it does require iOS 16, so the latest version of iOS, and the device needs to be a LiDAR compatible device, so it has to have a LiDAR sensor in it in order to use this feature. And I know some people were saying, well, I do have both of those done and I'm not seeing it. I did see Darren posted within our partner group that they are putting out an update to make it a little clearer and less problematic. So if you are in that window of, I've got both of those, I have a LiDAR compatible device and I am on iOS 16 and I'm not seeing it, it should be seen here in the next few days once service-made update hits your device. Okay. Now on mobile as well, there was an improved calendar function, which I know it's just the biggest thing here is a lot cleaner and a lot easier to use. That was the big thing that a lot of people were looking for. Now, on mobile, there was some additional custom organization of the items in your list, which kind of makes me think about another piece that would be good to talk about from an organizational lens on desktop. Let me go back over here. And within desktop, one of the new items is the ability to sort your job queues and your staff, which you don't really do it from this screen. Let me go back to my settings and go to my job queues, for example. And they're probably right here. I'm just not seeing them. Oh, there they are. And job queues. Oh, man. I'm trying to remember. I know I looked over this, but I'm scratching my head again on how I organize my job queues. Let's look at staff. I'm gonna have to come back to that one. I know I looked at that and forgot already how to do it. But I know one of the things that was a big one for a lot of teams, because I do have several teams where they have several staff members, um, and keeping them organized or seeing them grouped the way you want is somewhat difficult. So with the update, we are able to now organize your staff on the list and organize your queues in the order you want. So in the past, we've looked at maybe putting a number in front of the queue to get them in the right order you would like. With staff, people putting numbers or letters in front of them to get them in the right order that they want to see them in. This will make that much, much easier to organize them, is the big thing. Okay, go back over here. Yeah, let's take a look here. What am I missing? Ah, okay. So from queues, I'm not seeing that. Ah, there it is. It's hiding on me. So I must be, not sure why, that could be a glitch. So I just had to scroll a little bit, and this was the object it was looking for. So set custom order. So this is where I'd be able to set the order of my queues. So if I wanted workshop on top here and save that, not only does it update my queue board, it also updates my queues at the top of the list here. Sorry about that. So staff, calendars, all right. So for staff, similarly, under the staff dropdown, we hit set custom order, and I can assign my staff in the order I would like to see them. And not only will that update this list, it will also update my staff members at the top of the list as above my list as well in the staff members section. All right. My dog. There we go. Sorry about that. All right. So that's the staff ordering. So the other notable change, and I know a lot of teams who have extended hours was getting a little difficult to show what that looks like and to see bookings outside of that. And I want to say, yeah, no. When I look at, in my account, obviously, I'm seeing a fairly limited set. So when I go to my preferences for this, okay. So if, it sounds like if we have anything scheduled outside of normal hours, so let me go to my all jobs and go ahead and schedule this for something fairly outside the norm. So let's go to schedule this for today at 8 p.m. And now, before, if you recall, we were only seeing out to 6. So in that 6 to 7 line was the end. If I schedule anything outside of the norm, it now will show up automatically, and the schedule will adjust to that. Where in the past it just wasn't visible at all, which was obviously creating problems if anyone did accidentally schedule something at the wrong hour. So if you wanted something that's scheduled at 8 and you accidentally 8 a.m. and you want it accidentally scheduled for 8 p.m., you just missed it altogether. Now that won't happen. I think that was a big one for a lot of teams as well. All right, so let's kind of keep scrubbing through here. Now I know some teams use. I'm more of a staff schedules more than a calendar. Some people prefer calendars. It's rather personal preference, but I think one of the big things that we're seeing here that got updated. Not that my calendar is a great example at the moment, but if you are one to use calendar, you have a lot of stuff in there. It will automatically make better use of that vertical space, so that way you have easier to work with. Is the big thing that got updated in 11 as well. Okay. So another big one that was added in the past, if I wanted to schedule something, I'd have to drag it over. Now I can literally select the block of time I want and select the job for the creation of that job, making it a bit easier to work with, especially. So I don't have to go find the job. If I see the hole in the schedule, I can now select that block of time and say, great, fill that with this job specifically. But I think one of the really big improvements that was added, because it's been a sore spot really since its inception, and it's great to see that it's getting some love now, are job allocations. And a job allocation is where I'm going to grab a job and drag it onto a specific staff member and allocate it to the person as opposed to scheduling it to that person. And where this is especially useful, and that most teams kind of see it, is let's say you left a part or a tool back at a job site. I don't need to schedule a time to go back and do it. It just needs to happen. Work it in, make it fit, just go back and do it. But don't forget about it. So what this allows us to do is to say, okay, well, you need, you're only going to need about 15 minutes to do this. It's not urgent. Just any time during business hours, get this taken care of. I always recommend putting an expiration on anything, but especially an allocation, because you don't want to forget about it, and allocate it to that person. And I don't need to do any kind of notification. Let's just send that on. So what that does is, if I were to look at the staff member that was set for, in the past, the only place to see it was on their actual schedule when I look at their job list. Now it will also be on the schedule where I can see it visually. I can still work around it and do other things with it, but it's now there. And this is a great place to be a reminder, unless I do need to schedule some jobs as well. I'm going to put this here. And if you notice, as soon as I schedule that 8 a.m. job, it automatically moved that allocation to after. So it's going to find its space regardless. But what a lot of teams have started to use allocations for as well is for your sales opportunities. So when I need to do sales follow-ups or call follow-ups with customers, allocate those, because a lot of times I don't need to, again, schedule them for a specific time, which I can still do kind of in allocations by giving it a time frame, but I just need to do it. And so, hey, this week I'm going to call this person or whatever the case might be, and I'm going to allocate it to myself as the salesperson, put it on there, and while in between my other sales calls where I'm going to see customers for quotes, these are the calls that I also need to make, and it's a great place to have reminders of those. But now to visually see those on the schedule is going to be really, really helpful for a lot of teams. So putting anything, so to Shannon's question here, once a job is closed, and by closed I'm assuming you mean completed or unsuccessful, and you put it on an allocation, it would reactivate the job, which is actually what it would do, because obviously anything that goes on the dispatch board should be either a quote or a work order. So if I had a completed job, let's say in the example of, hey, you left a tool back at this job, I need you to go get it. Taking that completed job and putting it onto the dispatch board, whether it was an allocation or a hard time, automatically needs to become a quote or work order again. So that's why those jobs are going back to a work order after being completed if you were to do so. Now, in your comment here, obviously once it's back to a work order if it wasn't already approved. Well, even if it was, obviously that would mess that part up. I see what you're saying. So the biggest thing you'd probably need to do is to create a new $0 job for that customer, just to say, hey, you need to go back to this job site to pick this up at that point. So you wouldn't, in that case, you may not want to, if it's an active job, it's great to use the allocation. If it is a completed job, you may need to create a new one just for this thing that needs to happen, whether it's a follow-up call. Think of it kind of like a callback that you may need to go back and do something. Even if it's just picking up a part, it may need to be its own separate job at that point. I hope that answered that question. All right. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is with these allocations, and if I had several allocations, let's just pull up some other jobs here. And I'm just going to grab one here and do the same thing with it. So this is going to be during business hours and 15 minutes again, and save it, notify. Oops, don't do that. There we go. And cancel this one just to get a little bit more space here. So I've got these two jobs on this schedule that are allocations, job 3 and job 2. You can organize them as far as which ones are important, and it will keep that. So if I start stacking them and moving them around, it will maintain that order. So if you had several of them, and okay, this is the most important one, even though it's maybe older or newer, it's more important than the other ones, I can move those around fairly easily. Oops. There we go. And I don't need to grab the first one and bring it back. I can grab a later one and bring it forward, and they'll just reorder themselves automatically. Okay. So I was just reading some of these bits, because the other thing that got some love was job allocations, and I'm sorry, reoccurring jobs, and it was in relation to, and was actually the next item in the list. So let me just pull that up. So I need to activate that add-on, recurring jobs. Perfect. And the big thing with recurring jobs, and I may really need to show it on ServiceMate's page more so, is that recurring jobs are going to show up on the schedule like I like them. I can activate them from there. But also, if I make a change to those recurring jobs, it's going to automatically allow me to work with them in a smarter way. So what I mean by that is, if I were to move a job that's recurring on the schedule to a different day, so it's scheduled for Monday and I move it to Wednesday, it will say, hey, do you want to move all of them to that schedule as well, or is it just a one-off situation? Which makes life a whole lot easier when things do get shifted and moved, and you have to go through and change some things. So instead of having to leave what you're currently working on to go change something, ServiceMate is making it easier to automate that process. And it's just like what ServiceMate did for the accessing the job, the client record from the job. The other nice thing that was added, let's see if that was activated here, which it is. So within reoccurring jobs, you can now see additional columns of data, and one of those columns is suburb and staff. Now I don't have anything in here yet, but what the suburb and staff allow you to do is to sort them by that. So if you were to say, hey, what jobs do I have together? You can now see those by sorting them by the suburb. ServiceMate also added that same additional column option, so not the same ones, but additional column options in invoicing. So I know this was a big thing for a lot of teams where they wanted to sort the jobs by specific job categories. Now you can see those job categories from the Invoice tab. This is a big one for a lot of people, as well as being able to search for specific jobs from the Invoicing tab. So in the past, sometimes you have a very large list and you're trying to find them in this list. Now you can finally search for some stuff, making life a lot easier when you're looking in lists and lists and lists for things. That same search is also in the Reoccurring Jobs tab as well. That was a big one. Now, I will say the Reoccurring Jobs did get a slight change, where in the past, there was kind of an option here to switch between either Reoccurring Simple or Advanced. Now, as soon as you deviate from the frequency to custom, that's what activates the advanced options before. So I think some teams just wanted to point that out, because if you didn't see that option, you'd be like, hey, how do I get off of the simple and get to the advanced stuff? That's just a matter of setting the frequency to custom, and that's how you'd be activating that. Okay. Now, one thing that has been kind of difficult for a lot of teams is getting them to have the device set up correctly with their location settings, and knowing which ones don't have it set up correctly, and trying to figure that out and need to grab everyone's devices and do that. Now there is something called the highlights, GPS highlights, and so anyone who doesn't have their GPS set up correctly will be listed in the staff list, highlighting them as saying, hey, it's not set up correctly, and be able to then work with that specific person on that, as opposed to not knowing and trying to figure that out. This is going to be really, really great for people who are trying to leverage that. I will kind of throw out there that my team is working on a fleet management integration with a fairly decent sized company to bring an appliance level solution to GPS management, as opposed to relying on the software side of things, which can sometimes go wonky. So we're hoping to bring some hardware and appliances to that situation, and then get a really good integration with ServiceMate to go along with that. All right. This was a really big one as well, because on mobile, you have the option of adding travel time to your smart labor, where on desktop you didn't. So now you're able to use that travel time when adding those in. Another really nice feature was I can now set a default labor rate per staff member. And I have several team members they've got labor rates per staff member, and it's difficult to manage sometimes. So this addition allows staff members, when they're using those smart labor areas, to have it default, as opposed to having to manually set it all the time. So, and looks like from 25th hour for service mate 11, once you've activated it, it activates account wide. So it's not this person's on 10, this person's on 11. Once you've activated it on your account, it's account wide. Now, a lot of teams are using ServiceMate to capture their time in and out for the day for payroll, and having that payroll automatically sync to, in the U.S., probably QuickBooks Online or possibly Deputy. But the biggest thing here, this one is really more talking to your accounting package, so QuickBooks, and they just have some better automated tools for that is the big thing. Okay. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot of customers using Xero in the US, so that's not a big deal. Job diary filtering, talked about that. Editing notes. So it's kind of interesting that they've added that because editing items in the mobile app has been fairly restrictive just because we want to limit people doing the wrong thing on mobile. But now editing notes is there. So I think 2 years ago they introduced editing forms. Now we're seeing editing notes on mobile, which will be nice. And keep in mind, anytime you're working with a note, you always have that option to add it to the activity feed. So if it is something that is important for everyone to see, that activity feed is what we see on the home screen, that bulletin board area that I talked about at the beginning. Okay. Now, one area, and let me flip back over to ServiceMate here, that we saw in the job diary for the filtering is the history. And where this is helpful, and it takes a minute to generate because it's finding all these different changes in all these different areas and displaying them. And what this gives you is sort of the history of changes that have taken place on this job. Let me see if I can find one that's got a bit more to it. I have a feeling. We'll try this one. It might not have much, but we'll take a look here. Yeah, that one doesn't have much at all, but I think this one might. So, not a lot, but even still, what we're seeing here are as different pieces of the job have changed, we're seeing when they were done, what they were changed to, and who did it, which can be really, really helpful to kind of troubleshoot and figure out a change that was either made in error or, oh, I meant to put this number on this other job, not this one. So you'd be able to see what it maybe was originally because those are here versus what it became and be able to make changes back to those points as needed. I don't think these, it doesn't automate the change back, but at least I can copy and paste and put things back to maybe the way they were if you needed to. Okay. So while you can always copy and paste text into notes, now you can also copy and paste an image or a file that might be on your computer directly into that same area, and it's going to place that attachment at that point for you into the job. So while you can always drag and drop, people always forget about drag and drop. You can always drag and drop directly into the job card, but now you can also paste not only text but images and files into the job card as well. Now, this is something we've in the past done some kind of workarounds and do some custom fields for changing an invoice date. And ServiceMate kind of made a point of saying this isn't something you normally want to do very much, but sometimes you kind of have to, you kind of need to. And so what you can now do on a job that has been completed, which let me just kind of take one of these jobs here and change it to completed. Great. And interesting. I wonder if I need to enable something on that one. I'll have to dig into that one because I may need to enable something that's not jumping out at me. Or I may need to have a template that will use this new date, which could be as well. You may have to add something to your document templates to use this function. But once you have that enabled, there'll be a drop down with your invoice. If you only have a single invoice template, you'll have a drop down then, and you'll have the option to change the invoice date. And once you have that enabled, you'll be able to change that invoice date to whatever date you want and reproduce your document to then display that date. And that date will also be what's shared to everything else. So the accounting package, live statements, and everything else will now use that new date as opposed to the original date when the job was marked completed. Okay. Kind of talked about some of those invoice improvement niceties as far as being able to see and find data in the invoicing tab better. If you within the invoicing tab, there is an improvement as well for being able to use different email and document templates. I'm saying document templates, but I know email templates specifically because that was one of the point of contentions. Hey, I want to use this other email template, but it's forcing me to use this one. You can now select the email template you would like to have used. And I think for a lot of customers, this is a nice thing to have. So if you are creating a new job for a customer and there's jobs with payments overdue and they have some balances that are still due, that might be good to know before you start creating new work for them. So I think this is going to be a really nice add as well for a lot of teams to be able to see that right from the job creation as a note from the job diary. Live statements got an update. I could keep scrubbing through here, but I do want to hear from you guys because I know we're coming up on kind of the end of this session. Keep in mind, this first session, I did want to just do more of a quick overview on some of these things, where some of the future trainings will be much more specific and in-depth as we're creating content that will be used for the recording and become the training materials moving forward. If I'm going to keep scrubbing through here, but if you do have anything specifically while we're together that you would like to ask, please do go ahead and throw it in the chat. I think that is listed later here, but just in case it's not, I do remember one of the big things for that in automation. Let me just scrub through here to make sure I'm not missing. Yeah, it's not even listed here, which is kind of funny. So obviously the statement tool sends out statements to your customers through the automation. One of the other really popular automations was feedback. And feedback got a really nice update now where, first of all, if you did want to have customers use your Google Facebook link as opposed to use, it first hits ServiceMates and then says, hey, do you want to push this to Google? If you provide your Google feedback, I know that's not the right word, but for lack of a better term, the Google feedback a link in there, Google reviews, there it is. When they provide feedback, it will give them the option to directly provide that directly to Google as opposed to going through ServiceMate first. As well as if you do jobs for customers and you do a lot of them, you'll have the option to say, give them a pause between receiving those feedback links. So if you're doing jobs for customers almost every day or a couple times a week, instead of them getting possibly dozens of feedback requests from you, they get one every 30 days of work, which I think is a big one for a lot of teams as well. Reports got some updates there. It's great to see ServiceMate continually improving reports, and they kind of do every year as well. Do keep in mind we're able to provide more advanced reporting beyond what's in ServiceMate. So it's all ServiceMate data that we can then recompile and present to you really just about any way you would like. So that's always something that we can talk about as well. And so ServiceMate has been adding additional ways that you can sign in. So now, though, if your team is using Google Workspace or a Google account, you can now sign in using that. Just again, simplifying, not having so many different ways of signing into things. I'm assuming ServiceMate being so tied in and honed in with Apple, once Apple has ratified their new password system that they're going to be rolling out, I'm sure ServiceMate will be using that as well. And another big one that I have a feeling is, let me see if I make my screen a little bigger over here. Huh. I'm not sure why I'm not seeing that kick on, but the one I'm thinking about here is the global search. It is nice to be able to have it right there as opposed to activating a different screen to get to it. Yeah, and Shannon, do you want to try and pop that into the notes here for that question, or because it doesn't have to be just about the update, you can kind of throw it out on anything if you'd like, or yeah, go ahead. Um, and that's really most of it. It looks like perfect. So I know while Shannon's getting that together. So discounts to invoices. Yeah, so let me click back over to ServiceMate here. And so if I have a job that I want to apply a discount to, ServiceMate doesn't have, I'm just going to create a discount code here. So ServiceMate doesn't allow me to put in a negative dollar amount, only positive. So even though if I've got this $100 and I try to put a minus sign, I'm hitting minus on my keyboard, not doing anything. So I can't have negative dollar values, but I can have negative quantities. So if I do want to add a $100 discount, I just do a quantity of -1, and it applies a discount to the job. So that's really easy when it is a round dollar figure. If you're trying to do a percentage, you kind of have to do some math to figure out what that's going to be. But that's generally speaking how you do a discount. Anything else? Yeah, no problem. Well, I'm only seeing the one viewer still, so it looks like Shannon, it might just be you. So Shannon, unless you have everything else, hopefully see you next week. Not a problem. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.